This is KTN News.
Welcome back to the morning to the program. You're watching Sunday edition. Let's take a look at in the next 20 or so minutes. Take a look at the big headlines this past week. Just what some of the stories were, and try to analyze them as best as we can. My guests are already in the studio. Dismas Mokwa is here. Brian Mutie is here, and Professor Oeri Tumbo. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning. Morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
All right, let's start with this one. This was on the Standard, I think, locking horns. That is, of course, on the current war on corruption. A lot of scandals have been coming to the fore. The Jubilee administration under a lot of fire, especially from the opposition led by the core leader Raila Odinga. And this is just between the two. Let's start with this, Dismas. Raila's job from morning to evening is to criticize my government. Such utterances cannot bring development. That is, of course, words by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And Raila saying, I have never been a hypocrite. Theft is theft and can be prosecuted under the penal code. What do you make of this? I mean, Raila Odinga is in the opposition. He has every right to criticize the government of the day, taking a lot of political mileage from that. Uhuru Kenyatta crying foul on the other side. What do you make of this battle between the two?
There are two ways to look at it, Ben. Number one, Raila Odinga is in charge of 24 governments in Kenya. He's in charge of all the counties under code, and more specifically on the ODM counties, while the president is in charge of the national government as the Jubilee government, as well as the other counties under Jubilee administration. So at a national level, Raila Odinga has got that unique responsibility to make life for President Kenyatta uncomfortable all over the world. For a government in waiting, it's not their duty to wake up every single day and hand over a red rose to President Kenyatta. No, their duty is to make life a challenge. When President Kenyatta comes up with any policy suggestion, Raila Odinga is supposed to interrogate that policy. If there's mischief going on at a national level, Raila Odinga must point out that mischief. And again, it's erroneous for the president to imagine that Raila is doing this because he's in the opposition. Because strictly looking at it, we are not in a parliamentary system of administration. It's a presidential system. So really there is no opposition. Everybody is in government, either as a minority, as a majority. But when Mr. Raila Odinga has failed the nation at the counties under ODM, because if there's somebody running a county in Kenya under ODM and there's evidence to suggest that he's engaging in acts of corruption, then Raila's got the unique opportunity of summoning that particular governor because he's a member of his political party and to institute disciplinary measures against them. Like what they did to the people who they said are defected from ODM to another political party. So for instance, if there's a governor, say for Nairobi or Mombasa, who has engaged in acts of corruption, and ODM has convinced itself that in fact there's evidence that you have engaged in corruption, then they can summon the member, they can discipline him, they can even expel the member so that it becomes partyless.
Has that happened? There have been some allegations in the county of Kilifi. Do you think that has happened, as you're saying?
It happened once, and I don't know whether really it was a strict investigation, because at some stage Governor Ranguma in Kisumu was accused of mischief with a lot of, there were corruption allegations, and a team was set up to go and do the investigation. And they came up with a verdict that everything was super. But even that raises very fundamental questions, whether or not ODM as a political party can have access to all the information they've been looking for in a particular county, and if they get access, whether they've got the requisite talent or skills to make a prosecution. But in as much as Raila has got that opportunity, really at the end of the day, the buck stops with President Kenyatta, because he's in charge of the national institutions to do the investigations and prosecutions.
Instruments of power.
Yeah, and if President Kenyatta was expecting that as a head of state, everybody will be clapping and dancing to him, then he probably needs to consider his position.
Brian, what do you think about this locking of horns between Odinga and Kenyatta?
Yeah, as you said, we're operating through the presidential system as opposed to the one that we were operating earlier as a parliamentary system, where we used to have a slot for the opposition leader. And by the fact that we do not have that, I think it has really made the equation a little bit different. But that still puts Raila as the, king, I mean, as the leader of the opposition, by and large, by being due to the fact that he commands the biggest chunk of elected members in both houses, actually, so to speak. But having said that, his role is actually to critique the government of the day, is to keep the government of the day in toes and to ensure that checks and balances are applied equally. But when he says that he has a role to manage the ODM, counties and all that, I think he also has to understand that as much as Raila is also speaking about corruption, the kind of energy and the vigor that is actually applied in criticizing the government of the day in terms of corruption, he should also apply the same in equal measures also in criticizing and actually bringing about the issues of corruption in the so-called counties that he's actually, in charge of. So it's a matter of also making sure that you are objectively relevant in terms of your position as a opposition leader. And therefore, that's something that perhaps need to be looked into upon. Therefore, when you look at the kind of the heat that has been coming out of the last few couple of years, weeks and all that, you realize that Raila has actually picked a fight with every kind of endeavor the government of the day is actually trying to initiate in terms of projects, in terms of initiatives that would bring about improved livelihoods for the common mwananchi, Wanjiru and all that. But again, he also has to understand that he needs to find a better way of addressing these issues. Because I'm not a critic of Raila, but I want to bring on board an issue that perhaps is not working for him well, picking every small piece of issue and ballooning it to a national level that does not augur well with his position. He need to use his mercenaries, he need to use his foot soldiers to address those issues, just the way the presidency, Jubilee government has been using dwellers and the likes of the other, low cadre sort of leaders to address the issues or to punch to throw the punches. So Raila should also use the same units to ensure that he also makes it even for him.
Opposition people would tell you that it's not his work to sing praises of the government.
Of course, it's not. His role is not actually to smear the government as an attractive package. In
All
fact,
right, let's get the prof's view on this.
Actually, I am rather worried by my colleagues' proposals. First and foremost, I want to make a point about the president. I am embarrassed by the feebleness of his responses to Raila's punches. You cannot be hit by your major opponent. You are in the ring toe to toe, then you start crying in the ring. That's not what the contest is about. Two, if you look very carefully about the response of government to criticism, whether it's from Raila or from anybody, it is about, for them, it's about generating a narrative that diverts opinion. It's not about tackling head-on, answering issues blow for blow. So from that perspective, the government comes out as fairly politically, intellectually, and in terms of the political landscape, it looks feeble. They are feeble. And it looks like governing is not their core business. It's something they come to make comments about when they have been punched. The third point I want to make is this. My colleague here has said that Raila should adopt the tactics that the government is using. Then what the hell would he be doing there? Basically, he would be singing their music.
A king does not fight.
As far as I'm concerned, you see, as far as I'm concerned, it's very simple. At the moment, most political impact is generated when Raila throws a blow. The whole country, when he throws a punch, impact is everywhere. You see, and I've said this before, the people that are supposed to be foot soldiers for President Kenyatta and for William Ruto are basically involved in the dustbin. They are engaging in public assets. They don't have time to take on the arguments and help the government.
Why do you think that the Jubilee side are always on the defensive side? Like they never throw punches themselves. They never generate. Why do you think that they never generate, the political, agenda?
In a battle or in a war, there are two elements that are critical: intelligence. All right. The Jubilee group have access to intelligence. They don't use it, all right, in order to throw punches. The information is available. And most of us, even who are not in intelligence, have an information that Jubilee could use to help put code in its place. But the workers are not working. They're idling around the duty station. That's the first one. They're just idling around. They're all looking for a commission here, an agency there, a tender there. They are not involved. They are not, you see, the president, the deputy president, and his team should not be involved in statecraft. Statecraft, the business of running the institution of state that are allowed to value add from year to year. Right now, in my view, the president and his team is a collection of, for want of a better word, of idlers. Because when they are hit, they complain loudly about that individual, and the argument ends there.
All right.
Ben, if I may buttress my point, Raila Odinga is in charge of ODM. He's the party leader ODM, and he's the leader for CORD. And you would expect, because he's telling Kenyans that if I'm given the opportunity, I can take Kenya to the next level. You'd expect to see that in all counties, number one, which are run by ODM governors. So that he can tell us, in as much as there's a lot of noise coming from Jubilee, Jubilee is not doing very well at a national level, and in the counties they manage, look at the ODM counties. Look at how they're shining examples in Kenya. So that if you are, say, if you go to Murang'a, which is a Jubilee county, and then you go to Kisumu, which is an ODM county, you should be able to see a very big difference. If you go to a hospital in Nyeri and you go to a hospital in Homa Bay, you should see a big difference so that Kenyans can say, then Mr. Raila Odinga seems to be a good leader because he's offering ODM leadership. That's what he must do. And he's in charge of that political party. So in as much as he doesn't control the other agencies like the Anti-Corruption Commission or the prosecutorial agencies, but he must instill discipline in his political party. And then number two, the reason why majority of Jubilee people cannot create the agenda, there's incest going on in the country today. There's a big relationship between the political leaders as well as the business leaders. There's a thin line between business leaders and political leaders in Kenya. It's actually the same people, because majority of the people in government today, both the top public servants and the governors, as well as the MPs, permanent principal secretaries and cabinet secretaries, they've established special purpose vehicles. So they're actually principal suppliers to business. And as Professor Tumba has indicated, most of the time they'll be around trying to establish which tenders are available today, which tenders am I supposed to be pushing. And before they know, Raila is unearthing a scandal every single day. And they have no moral grounding to react to Raila, because they know Raila is not in business. And in as much as he's been accused by Duale, has been a beneficiary of what the ODM governors are doing, you cannot have his fingerprints anywhere. You cannot actually say, Mr. Raila Odinga, you went to Mombasa, and these are how these roads are financed. Raila has to go to Mombasa, he has to go to Kisumu. But you know, it's not easy to immediately say this is the source of his funding. And as a result, these guys are busy running around. And you know, there's a saying, a Victorian saying, that the guilty are always running. And Raila now has taken a very powerful spotlight and is zooming into them. That's why they're disappearing into the forest.
Yes, Brian.
Let me chip in. Yeah, let me chip in something and correct misconception that is having that coded counties are more or better managed compared to Jubilee counties. I think that's a perception, and I do not.
I've not said that. I said they should be. If Raila wants to show us that he's going to lead.
I don't know where they should be, but because I don't know which is your reference point and the scorecard that you're basing that argument. But I want to say that we have to understand there's a devolution, and there's a very big difference between politics of the day and the devolution. When we infuse politics of the day to devolution, then we are going to kill that spirit of devolution that we created. Let me say this. The reason why I'm saying this is because you cannot always, peg Raila to every aspect or every sector of development. Devolution being included. Because Raila, according to the Constitution, right now he has no role to play in terms of ensuring that the works of devolution are seen.
But Brian,
I know that. Wait a minute.
Isn't he a government in waiting, as he keeps saying? I think what Dismas is trying to say is, if you're a government in waiting, you need to at least show. You're not mandated by law, but you need to show.
To show that leadership.
What you can do as a government.
And especially when you've got a number of ODM governments.
Let me clarify, Ben. As much as you want to tell us Raila should keep the coded counties, in a way that they look shining, is Raila not an opposition for the entire country and a leader in waiting? Therefore, to me, he should also say that he should also keep the Jubilee counties on toes to ensure that they also perform good. Not only just the crowded counties only, but also the Jubilee counties.
I think let us separate the arguments. I think you mix them up really amazingly in a very short time.
Does Dismas
First and foremost, I understood this must be saying that Raila should not be obsessed with what the Jubilee counties are doing wrongly. He should also be concerned directly and take responsibility for what the governors in the controlled counties. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
That's what I said.
I said also.
I quoted you. Just a moment. Okay. Just a moment, Brian. But you twisted it by saying that he had stated that the code counties are clean and then the other ones are untidy. But the point I want to make, Ben, is this.
Yes.
First and foremost, you know a difference, or you experience a difference between the way CORD does its business and Jubilee. In Jubilee, Kenyatta speaks, Ruto speaks, Duale speaks, others speak.
All right.
In CORD, Raila speaks, sometimes Orengo speaks, sometimes Mbadi speaks, sometimes United speaks. But in Jubilee, all right, Raila's voice is dominant. I'm sorry, in CORD, Raila's voice is dominant other than the voices of Kalonzo Musyoka and Wetangula.
Yes.
But in Jubilee, everybody speaks because everybody makes money.
All right. Let's leave that at that. Let's take a look at another headline from the Standard this past week. Politics, Wetangula saying why Raila and Kalonzo should leave it to me. Why should Kalonzo and Raila leave it to him?
That's lovable.
You know, again, for some reason, you begin to wonder whether Wetangula and Kalonzo are actually serious about getting the CORD ticket. When you look at Raila Odinga's calendar, he's got activities all over the nation. He's spending a lot of resources, he's spending a lot of time, and even at his age, you begin to wonder how he's able to maintain that heavy schedule. And he's building a lot of political capital. You've not seen the same coming from Wetangula, and you've not seen the same coming from Kalonzo. So one would imagine that it would be very naive for Kalonzo and Wetangula to expect that one day Raila will just wake up in the morning and he says Kalonzo Tosha or Wetangula Tosha. They've not gone the extra mile to prove to anybody in Kenya that they actually deserve this. If you had Kalonzo covering the entire breadth of Kenya, having a lot of meetings with opinion leaders, doing town halls, doing serious campaigns, and Wetangula doing the same, and you can actually feel them in your system, then at that stage they can go to Mr. Raila Odinga and say that having looked at the mathematics and at the philosophy of voting in Kenya, looking at the voting patterns, then there's a very high chance that if you endorse me, I would run with the ticket and I would easily beat Jubilee. But right now, what are they doing? They're seated in some restaurants, holding small-time meetings, and hoping that Raila Odinga, who has spent a lot of political capital countrywide, will be very magnanimous on one Sunday morning and say Kalonzo Tosha or Wetangula Tosha.
Brian, Wetangula and Kalonzo doing that. I understand Kalonzo was somewhere in the outskirts of the Kajiado County.
Exactly. Yeah, he had a very successful tour of the people in Kajiado, specifically in Rongai, and actually, conspicuously, I could actually follow that, and I can tell you it was a fruitful sort of meet the people tour.
So is it doing? Dismas says those two gentlemen are not
I think
putting in the work.
I want to first correct another misperception from Dismas that he wants to portray Raila as somebody who can wrestle the power from the Jubilee single-handedly. Let him learn that in this country, up to now, everybody knows that no single party can do that. It needs other individuals, other parties, and other partners to join hands to ensure that they capture power. And again, this indication that the others are being treated as feebles, politically speaking, Kalonzo and Wetangula, is not true, because they have their political relevance in terms of numbers. You cannot say that Raila can go and make it alone without these people. And again, for Wetangula to say that he wants Kalonzo and Raila to leave it for me, I think to me that's far-fetched. That's a little bit ambitious in the sense that according to opinion polls that have been carried over and over, it has showed that his percentage is between 2 and 3% national speaking, and the others are actually akin to the tune of 29, almost 30, and so on and so on. And therefore, for Wetangula, I think he still wants to show that political relevance, that he still need to be seen as somebody who is also, participating in the politics of the day. But at the end of the day, analysts would tell you that he's still an infant when it comes to political might.
Yesterday, Prof, Wetangula was installed as, the Fort Kenya's presidential, flag bearer. Today, the ODM brigade is going to Mbita in Homa Bay County, where the memorial service of the late Otieno Kajwang, and their sources are telling us that there could be a lot of endorsements of Raila to be, the core candidate. Just what gives in this
First, thank you. First, I want to comment on what this man said. Personally, I look at the three core principles as different personalities. They are very, very different in approach. They are different in background and in performance. Raila has been around the block for almost 40 years now, from the time he was struggling to being his own man. So the networks that he has built over time are quite significant. Now, Kalonzo is a gentleman who wants cultured, disciplined, properly organized approaches to issues. Now, Wetangula is in between, but the three of them, are undergoing three different stages of political maturity and progress. What has happened is that, in terms of charisma, Raila creates charisma, positive and negative charisma, everywhere. So as a result, people are bound to get excited about his actions. He's not necessarily better, but in politics, you don't have to be better. You simply have to have that little thing that it takes to take you across the fence.
Right.
Now, to come back to your point, if you look at what is going on at the moment, Wetangula, Kalonzo, Raila, there is actually internal competition in court. Everybody is trying to say, look around here. I'm better than the other one for a specific reason.
Right.
So when they go to Homa Bay, clearly, that's Raila's home base. There's going to be a lot of Raila's cronies, everybody trying to undo the other to make sure the king notices them. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of that. But what I want to say in concluding this discussion is that, in my view, it is healthy for CORD.
The internal competition
is completely healthy.
All right.
And Kalonzo has the experience, probably not the rabble-rousing capability. Wetangula, as I said, he shouts himself hoarse.
All right, we need to leave this alone. Brian, we need to prove.
If you may allow me, yesterday, Kalonzo's tour, I think, to me, was a show of his unity and the kind of misperception that was there, that Kalonzo and Mudama were parting ways. But yesterday they were tied together, and that's the message they were trying to pass.
Okay, we'll see how that continues. Still in this headline, there's a story about the South Korean President Park Geun-hye, who has been encountering a lot of problems ever since she visited Kenya. so I don't know if just Kenya's problems rubbed off on her, but this must very quickly. Are we ever going to see the kind of 1.3 million people on the streets in South Korea saying that she needs to step down. And this is because of what in Kenya would be seen as something very small.
Well, I think the difference in the governance systems in Kenya and South Korea, they are two worlds apart. That in South Korea, you're going to be held responsible for anything you do. And it's about even lapse in judgment. It's not about even having stolen any money. Because President Park has not stolen Wanjiku's resources in South Korea. But they are saying that one of your childhood friends has had unlimited access to state information, and this is unacceptable. And President Park has actually gone on national TV and in a very solid act of patriotism, apologized to the entire nation. And they've told her, no, we don't want this kind of mischief. So it's about nations and the institutions of governance. In Kenya, for us, we claim that somebody is only corrupt when you've stolen and actually your hand is in the jar. But in other countries, they've taken the bars to a very high level.
All right. Prof,
and on the issue of Viagra, maybe just for the Kenyan audience, it's not as if she was coming to Kenya for a sexual trip. The reason why the members of that trip were given Viagra is about the altitude, so that people don't get confused that there was any mischief going on in Nairobi.
Right, yeah, that's very... Is it about institutions in South Korea, or is it about the people and the fact that they demand more from their leaders?
I think it's about people. It's not about institutions. In that culture, there is a thing called personal honor. There are things, if you are a mzee, there are things you don't do, there are things you don't say, there are things you don't touch, and there are people you don't associate with, period. Right. Now, where you work, there are things you don't do against your colleagues at work. There are things you don't do with them in injuring the public image and the related benefits. So what is missing, what is here in abundance, and what you see in Korea is Eastern culture. This thing about personal decency and personal immolation when you get it wrong. Personal, you must engage in progressive restitution for the public, for yourself, and for your family. All right? If you work for a company, don't forget in that part of the world, most of the time, you are employed by one company from the beginning to the end. You don't jump around. Yeah. So the point here is that what Kenya needs to learn is that as individuals, each of us has a responsibility to use the faculties to distinguish between right and wrong and use that to promote the public good.
Yes,
but this is what we are missing.
I think to me it's all about the democratic maturity. The democratic maturity between these countries, the parity or the disparity between this country and Korea is so big that in Kenya such kind of news would only find their space in the social media, but in Korea you will not find it actually in the mainstream media at all. But in Korea, that's a big story, that's a big hit issue, and therefore it all depends on the democratic space and maturity that these two countries are actually operating on.
All right, let's take a look at another one here for just two minutes only, and this takes us back to the discussion about CORD and their presidential flag bearer. Kalonzo, of course, like Prof saying, everybody, pulling to their side. Kalonzo says Raila cannot be our candidate if he is losing again. I mean, this discussion, we can talk about this for the whole year. Prof, what do you think about this tactic that Kalonzo, both Kalonzo and Rutangula have been using this saying?
The point Kalonzo is making is good. What he's not disclosing is that he's the one who made Raila lose last time.
Oh.
Yes.
By simply walking out when he needed.
That is in 2007?
Yes.
But there's an argument who really walked out, because there was a party called ODM Kenya.
Yes.
And then Raila and his team bought ODM from... So who bolted? There's that conversation.
By the way, that argument is valid from both sides. It's valid from... It's got point.
All right.
We can argue about which has more merit than the other. But what I wanted to add is this. We can blame Kalonzo for what happened. We can blame Raila for what happened. In my view, they should get together, right? They should reduce the tendency with which they negatively paint the other in public. They should begin saying nice things about each other so that it helps to promote that spirit of reconciliation and traveling towards consensus. Now, in case of Raila, he must restrain his people from belittling the others. That's an extremely important
generals.
The generals. Secondly, Kalonzo must review his position about sounding like he's complaining. What he should be doing is continually making proposals that support the case that he's a better candidate, that who is likely to carry more people than Raila. Then produce data that would support that argument.
Musyoka saying that Kenyans, it's time Kenyans tried him.
I think he's actually drawing reference from opinion polls that I keep on referring in this show that have actually, when Kalonzo and Wetangula are paired together, or Kalonzo and Mudavadi are paired together, against the government of the day, they stand a better chance compared to Raila, candidature with whoever he's paired with. And therefore, drawing from that reference, I think, gives them some sort of strength to push, to keep on pushing on this will of, this dream of theirs. And therefore, Kalonzo is still having his dreams intact. And therefore, to me, it's a matter of pushing the right buttons at the right time. He needs to repackage himself. I think this notion of himself, placing himself as a Kamba leader, he should demystify that, and he should go out there and conquer other communities, rebrand, and even, strengthen his outfit to attract more, aspirants and more support from other, communities. Right. But again, I want to also put it this clearly that we do not, it's media and people like us who would want to depict some leaders as weak and others as strong by giving the public the wrong information. Let me tell you one thing. Kibaki was seen as also a feeble leader, so to speak, but he managed this country beyond our expectations. He has that personality that nobody wants to say this is the best leader that this country would
It's a democracy, right? It's not
it is
media.
democracy.
So it's about the numbers.
Wait a minute. Let me finish up if you may allow with people. Therefore, if you compare Kalonzo and the Kibaki, these people are almost of the same kind of character traits, but give them the space and they will deliver beyond your expectation. So let me not punch you in the wrong way, Dismas. I know you are being agitated by the fact that you seem to be inclined towards Raila. But again, let's also remember.
Look at this gentleman.
Look at Dismas. Let's also not forget that we need to give these people equal measures in terms of analyzing what they are able to deliver for this country.
You need to win. It's a democracy.
Ben, let me use a good example. There are, if you have 3 men going to the gym and they're lifting weights and all of them want to develop muscles, you'll actually see the muscles. Nobody needs to tell you that I've got a stronger biceps. You'll be able to see the muscles. Anybody today who underestimates Raila Odinga is doing it at his own peril. If you're Kalonzo Musyoka, you need to be more structured in your approach to issues. You cannot say, Raila Odinga, I want you to endorse me, and then in the same sentence you say, Raila Odinga, you are a perennial loser. How do you expect Raila to react? He would rather then go look for Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, or even look for Kenyatta and say, I'm endorsing you. Because if you expect Raila Odinga to endorse you, you need to approach him with caution, you need to treat him with respect. And if you think that he's a perennial loser, then go to the gym, work on your muscles, and let Kenyans see them.
Sure. But Dismas, why have you changed tune? Because there's a time you used to say that.
Exactly.
I've not changed. I've not changed. I've said.
Just clarify.
No. If you place it in context, if you're looking at Kalonzo, you're looking at Raila, and you're looking at Wetangula, and you want Raila to come and endorse you, you must demonstrate to the entire nation that you are worth of an endorsement. You must demonstrate to Raila Odinga that you've actually matured, that you deserve an endorsement. You do not go sit back at home, spend all your time at a salon and say that because Raila's probability of beating President Kenyatta is very low, he will have no alternative. He'll come and endorse me.
Right,
you have to go the extra mile and work hard.
Yes,
thanks for the clarification.
Thanks. I think I like that clarification. I wanted to add something else. Let's be a little bit careful. Kibaki, he was soft. He wasn't weak.
Oh, my.
That's the difference. You see what Kibaki did? He spent time enabling others to perform. If you look at Kibaki, when Kibaki came into power, he provided an opportunity for people who were crying for room to play. They were given a room to play. And because of that, in my view, he was able to take the nation to a different level. We're carrying out our economic activities at a different level. And I say that because the first thing he was able to do was harmonize tax collection, which had never been harmonized since independence.
Right.
For me, that was his takeoff platform. Secondly, I don't consider Kalonzo weak. I consider him diplomatic. You know, the guy who wants everything solved through logical discussion, persuasion, and conviction. Now, if you want to call that weak, that is the language of international business.
All right.
But we are now, what we are discussing here is that Kalonzo is equipped in a different area. Raila is equipped in a different area.
Good.
Wetangula is equipped in a different area. But when now you put these people in what I call the political dustbin, all right, you end up, after they've all mixed up with the garbage, who stands taller than the other? The answer is for Wananchi to take.
Yes, and what works for
Yes.
Kenyans? What do Kenyans want to see?
Yes.
Do they want to see the bravado or do they want to see the diplomacy?
Yes.
Anyway, that's why we leave it on this segment where we're taking a look at the headlines. It is 11 a.m. In the next 1 hour, when we return after this quick commercial break, we shall be taking a look at the issue of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the issue of new commissioners, especially the next chair of the IEBC. 5 have been shortlisted. The panel is re-advertising for that position. Jubilee is pushing for that. The opposition is against that, accusing Jubilee of tactics to delay or even postpone the elections. We'll talk about that next here on Sunday Edition. Stay with us.